My name is Frank Ducote. I'm a former senior urban designer with the City of Vancouver, and for the last 10 or so years I've been a private consultant in urban design, both here and internationally.
Okay, so you should have some very interesting thoughts.
I have some strong opinions on what's going on, maybe some little bit of history and I hoped informed opinion, not just knee-jerk responses. So there's a lot here that brings me to here. For example, of all the boards here, there's maybe 10 or 12 or more boards here. There's 2 or 3 that are of particular interest to me. The waterfront tower proposal, which is actually a small part of this whole central waterfront. I'm part of the steering committee of the Central Waterfront Working Group. You might have read about it. Mm-hmm. We weren't so much opposed to the tower as how much it violated the existing plans for that area. The existing plans for that area call for an 11-story building, and all of a sudden you had a 26-story building. If this is the city policy, just imagine if it was next door to your house. You assume there'd be a 3-story building and somebody comes in with a 7-story building. You would feel like you have a right to grumble about that. Mm-hmm. So we, as a bunch of former planners with the City of Vancouver and other interested, I would call them urbanists, have tried to generate opinions about that and see where the public interest really is. And I think it's in the public interest, not the sum of all private interests does not equal the public interest. The public interest is a thing unto itself, and it isn't always equal to a whole series of private interests. Another one here is the Brent Hill development, where you may know where the city swapped a piece of social housing site next to Emery Barnes Park downtown with a developer who will be building another social project across the street, social housing project, but in return is getting a very, very big site right overlooking the park. To me, there was a big public interest there. You could have had a small building on the park or no building. You could have had a bigger park. But no, we made a deal here, and now we get yet another tall building. And it's a pattern here in the city. Let's make a deal. Finances will rule as long as we get, say, social housing out of it or CACs or something in council's interest. And we're saying, no, you got to step back from all those deals. That is not resulting on the ground in the best possible outcomes. A bigger park or a better waterfront or any number of other things here like that. So those are the kind of things. I just gave you 2. Another one I'm thinking about is Falls Creek Flats planning. I don't know about you, Susan, but I went to the open house when they kicked it off a few months ago. It was a beautiful open house. Lovely displays, wonderful young people getting to be deeply engaged in the planning. And they had a beer truck outside. It was wonderful. I've never been to an open house where they had beer. Anyway, I worked on the Falls Creek Flats in the 90s. You think there was any reference to the work done in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s when they kicked off in 2015? No. 2015 was the beginning of history, and we're going forward from here. It is not the beginning of history. History started 20 years ago on the Falls Creek Flats. We have to honor the history, the policy that's in place, and move forward from it. See how it changes. You can't ignore your own past, your own education, your own family, your own growing up. And I think it's disrespectful for those planners who worked on that and the public engaged in that to say we don't care. So I'm sorry if it sounds like a lot of negativity. I don't mean to be negative. I like to be positive. But those kind of things really irk me, where the policy doesn't matter, the history doesn't matter, and all what matters is what benefits the developer and council at this moment. And I don't like that.
Okay, so let's look at the positive side.
Positive side.
If you were in charge, how would you change things?
Well, first of all, I'd say, what is the policy? It's hard to believe. Planners believe in plans. To say we have a universe where there are no plans is like saying, why have planning at all? So the positive side is in every part of the city we have a plan. There is no part of the city without a plan. No part of the city without a zoning. There's existing rules and regulations and policies for every single piece of land in this entire city. And if you're going to change it, you better go through a due process around change. change is not easy, but it's necessary. I don't disagree with that at all. But you have to go through a good process and rationalize the change and make it convincing to people that it's not just in certain people's interests, but in everybody's interest to have that change. Or at least convince them that your side, you council, you whoever, developer, Mr. Developer, Miss Developer, have a better answer than I do. And I'm sure that's the case. And when it's a tough outcome, council has to decide. But in my view of the world, council shouldn't impose. Council is not a parliament. Council represents not a party, it represents all of us. And it's being run, to my way of thinking, like a parliament, and I'd rather it not be run like a parliament. And because it's not a parliamentary form of government. We elect 11 people, we don't elect one person, like in a riding. So we don't have that. So don't run it like that. The positive side, there's been a change in leadership at the Hall, significant retirements and changes, and I think there's a real positive outcome possible for new leadership. And I'm hopeful. Planners without hope they're a nasty lot. I mean, that's a sad thing, you know. You got to have hope. So that's all I have to say, okay?
Thank you so much.
All right,
Totally
thank you.
appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.